I believe we are live on YouTube. This is great. So welcome everybody. This is going to be a little bit new. This is a show called Radical Age Reversal, where we talk to you about ways to improve your longevity and maintain your vitality. Most of us know that we're chronologically aging, but did you know that you can control your biological aging, which means the years of your life can get more full, can get healthier, and can become more vital as you age. It doesn't have to actually break down the way most of us believe is just the norm. And so just to give some support to this concept that aging is a disease, we wanted to start off our first live YouTube with a bit of an overview of who's saying what and some books and some podcasts you may want to take a look at. These are podcasts and books that we're really excited about, and we hope you will be too. If you have other books or podcasts that you love, go ahead and put those in the comments section. But for now, let's just get started with today's presentation. Okay. So I thought I don't always love PowerPoints, but I thought having the PowerPoint today would be helpful because sometimes you want to take a screenshot or you want to look at the book titles, or we're also giving you some quotes that I think are going to be helpful to give you an idea of what the book is all about so that you can decide whether or not this is something you want to take out of your library or buy from your bookstore. So what you're going to learn today is we're going to talk about doctors who are focused on metabolic health. We're going to talk about books and podcasts that we hope are going to be of value to you, and at least the top 3 tips from each expert. We actually have a few more in there than just 3. So the first book, which I think most people are familiar with, which I think needs to be in your library, is the Obesity Code. And this is by Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung. He did a phenomenal job putting this book together. He has a great podcast. He has some wonderful YouTube videos. Definitely want to check those out. There's no question about that. Oh, I just realized that I don't have my name up here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you guys have that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie Donegan. I've been sort of in the health and wellness field for over 20 years now. I'm a doTERRA wellness advocate, and I've written a few books, and I love to travel the world and talk about natural health and how to actually bring more vitality into your life at every age. And I love to follow the science. I love to follow what's going on. And then I try to bring it down into bite-sized chunks so that you can discern whether this is the right information for you. So Dr. Jason Fung, I love some of these quotes. He says, but diet and exercise are not 50-50 partners like macaroni and cheese. Diet is Batman and exercise is Robin. Diet does 95% of the work and deserves all the attention. So logically, it would be sensible for us to focus on our diet, which makes sense. Exercise is still healthy and important, just not equally as important. Has many benefits, but weight loss is not among them. So that was shocking to me. I don't know if that statement's shocking to anybody else. Exercise is like brushing your teeth. It's good for you and should be done every day, but just don't expect to lose weight. Now, we do know that when you're in a caloric deficit and when you actually expend more energy, you should be breaking down fat. But what we're finding is that your body doesn't always work the way we suppose. There are things like cortisol levels, which may be preventing you from burning fats. And if you have too much cortisol, like for example, I'm a middle-aged woman, and if I'm starting to run at my age, I may actually find that I don't lose weight from running. So this was kind of the onion that he peels back in the Obesity Code. He says, once we understand that obesity is a hormonal imbalance, we can begin to treat it. Okay, so we're talking about insulin now, so keep that word in mind if you've never heard it before. If we believe that excess calories cause obesity, then the treatment is to reduce calories. But this method has been a complete failure. However, if too much insulin causes obesity, then it becomes clear we need to lower insulin levels. So if you've never heard this word before, insulin, just keep that in mind and know that the category it falls in is hormone. This is the ancient secret. This is the cycle of life. Fasting follows feasting. So his big overall thesis in the book talks about how to lose weight and how to use fasting, particularly for this achievement. So if you want to lose weight, fasting is probably going to be part of what you need to tweak. It was certainly what I needed to tweak in my diet. He says this is the cycle of life. Fasting follows feasting. Feasting follows fasting. Diets must be intermittent, right? So we're not like eating on a schedule, like a constant schedule, the same things every day, the same amounts every time. So if that's part of your life, that kind of really strict regimen, we're going to mix it up a little bit. Every single culture in the world celebrates with large feasts. That's normal and it's good. However, religion has always reminded us that we must balance our feasting with periods of fasting, atonement, repentance, and cleansing. So the body needs to be nourished, but it also needs to be cleansed. So feast with good, nutritious food, and then fast, this period of allowing your body to be at rest and to cleanse itself and repair. And it can't do that while we're eating. So something to keep in mind. Book number 2, Benjamin BIKMAN, Why We Get Sick. So insulin resistance is the epidemic you've never heard of. There's that word again. Okay, so it's our second book and we're already hearing the word insulin one more time. Caloric-centric paradigm, exercise more, eat less, has not proven to work. So this is doctor number 2 that says it's not about diet and exercise. You can't make a fat cell grow unless there is insulin, and you can't make a fat cell shrink unless insulin is low, even if there is a caloric deficit. Aha. All right. So gotta focus on that insulin. Go get your insulin levels tested. You're trying to get your fasting insulin levels tested. I would recommend that when you get that test that you fast for at least 16 to 18 hours. Okay. So that's not an 8-hour fast. That's try to make it a really long fast if you can. And if you can't fast that long because you're not metabolically flexible, they call it, right? So if your metabolism isn't really there where you can go long periods of time without eating, then you may have to actually work up to it. So you take a fasting window of maybe 12 hours and then slowly but surely stretch it 15 minutes at a time. And then his last quote that I wanted to draw your attention to is, we are sick. Around the world, we can struggle with diseases that were once considered rare. Cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes affects millions each year. Many people are also struggling with hypertension, weight gain, fatty liver, dementia, low testosterone, menstrual irregularities, infertility, and more. We treat symptoms, not realizing that all of these diseases and disorders have something in common. All right, so I want you to just take a minute. If you have a pen or if you have a smartphone and you want to write this down, any of those issues apply to you or members of your family or your closest friends. It's really important that you guide them toward this information so they can start to unwrap and find better ways to live so they don't have to stay stuck in these disease states. Now, this book, I have to say, used to be my absolute favorite. This got me thinking in a whole new way. The idea of health span versus lifespan. Okay, why we age and why we don't have to. I've noticed that, doctors talk a lot about longevity and trying to live into a ripe old age. But if you don't have quality of life, if you don't have health during those years, this is really what Dr. David Sinclair is talking about. All right. So this is a great book to kind of open your eyes to the concept of lifespan versus health span. So his research poses a question: what if we can choose our lifespan? So what if you can decide how long you're going to live and how vital those years are going to be? As the leading world authority on genetics and longevity, he reveals a bold new theory: aging is as a disease, and that disease is treatable. All right. So you don't have to think that there's always going to be a nursing home, critical care, and lots of medications in your future if you start today by doing some of the positive steps that these books recommend. Thanks to an increasing sedentary lifestyle and the abundance of sugars and carbohydrates on every supermarket shelf around the globe, high blood sugar is causing the premature death of 3.8 million people a year. That's a huge number. So I think we have to pause for a second and just digest that number a little bit and think about how we can actually reverse that. So there are some key words in that quote: abundance of sugar and sedentary lifestyle. So what can you do today to reduce the amount of processed sugar and increase the movement you make? Now, that's not necessarily exercise. That's getting up from your chair, maybe working at a standing desk, pacing in between, taking, working in an hour, maybe working 50 minutes, and then standing for 10 minutes and stretching, walking up and down the stairs, taking a quick 10-minute walk, going back to your desk and start working again. We have a lifestyle that basically puts us in front of a lot of electronics, which is something that actually keeps us stationary and sedentary. So let's think about how we can become a little bit more, we can add a little bit more movement into our day. That's really important. Okay, let's also talk about the next book, Robert Lustig's Metabolic. This one really shocked me. I think this is the first book that I read that made me a little scared and nervous. So if you're someone who doesn't want all the bad news at once, maybe don't start with this book, but it will give you an eye opener to really what's going on. So he says, after a long day, just imagine this, right? You sit down, you grab a bite to eat, turn on your TV, and you inadvertently consume a plate of poison. What? What plate of poison? So he's talking about our modern diet and all these chemicals, all these what they call obesogens that are hidden in so many packaged foods, processed foods. And it doesn't take much for a food to become processed. If it doesn't look like it did in nature when you are consuming it, then it probably has gone through a certain amount of processing. And in that process, there have been things added and changed, and we have to be really careful. I actually was at a natural grocery store yesterday, and when I tried to buy a loaf of sourdough bread, firstly, there was no sourdough starter in any of the sourdoughs, even though they were labeled sourdough. They all had yeast in them, which is not the way you make sourdough bread. And this is a natural grocery store, one of the labels said that it had a food engineered product in it. So we have to be really good label readers and vote with our dollars. If we don't want to consume these chemicals, then we're going to have to stop buying these foods. And if you live in a place where you don't have a lot of choice, or if you have a budget where you don't have a lot of opportunity to, spend at the higher end, which some of these really healthy foods tend to be a little bit more expensive, but not all of them. And if you follow the show, you'll see that we do give you some low cost, no cost options. And so it's not impossible, but certainly you're gonna have to be a little bit more creative with how you do things. Fasting is great because actually you can get rid of one meal right off the bat, and that saves you money, and you take that money and actually apply it to some better quality foods. So he says, if you buy your organic, all natural, GMO-free tortilla chips at Whole Foods, you're still stuffing your liver and starving your gut. You're just paying more for the privilege. So a processed food is a processed food is a processed food. Even if it starts with good ingredients, the processing of getting it to the end product is what really causes problems. Indeed, a low sugar, high fiber Mediterranean diet has been shown to be efficacious in the prevention and treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. I thought this was cool that he mentions in this book, certain ailments, certain issues. So if you're looking for a particular pathway, if you have some certain conditions, then this may be a really good book for you. Furthermore, the introduction of fiber to the diet appears to improve asthma, frequently an autoimmune disease, likely by improving gut function and reducing inflammation. So that's when we're talking about like fermented foods and high fiber foods and feeding your gut microbiome. All that good stuff is in this book. And lastly, he says, because if we prevented diabetes, the food manufacturers would go out of business. So you have to know where the money is, and you have to know, really what their motivation is. And that's their goal, right? To be able to keep more products on the shelf longer so they're not throwing them in the trash. To get consumers to buy more of them, they have to make them highly palatable, things that just taste good, and you want to eat more and more and more and more. So just keep that in mind. If you're eating a really good, healthy, natural food, you will at some point feel completely satiated, and you will not crave any other types of foods. But if you start to eat a food that's highly processed and loaded with chemicals, especially chemicals that cause cravings, you're just going to find that, oh, I want more and more and more. So just take note of how you feel after you eat a portion of a particular food, and you'll be able to actually start to think about, okay, do I really need more? Do I really want more? What's my body telling me? And start listening to your body. And, we're going to buy some better food, some smarter foods. All right, Dr. Mandy PELZ. She is a superstar. She's a rock star on YouTube. She's all over the place. I see her on all kinds of podcasts. I really enjoyed her book, and I refer to it quite often. I love fasting. This has become a real passion for me. I started in 2020, and now it's 2023. And it's a lifestyle that I really, really love. It makes me more creative with my cooking, and I'm adding really fun ingredients. So I love it a lot. She says poor metabolic health is not just a number on a scale or elevated blood work. It's a person in crisis. Now, so it's what I love about that is that we're not cookie cutters, right? So she's saying each individual person is going to need something a little different. And that's why you need to get to know your body and your health and understand your numbers and understand what you should be looking at. And all of these books give a portion of the big picture. All right. So start with one book and work your way through so that you can get sort of that full spectrum of all the information you need. You don't even need to go to a doctor and spend lots of money. You don't need to go to medical school and spend years and years studying this. These books will break down the key elements that we all need to live healthier, longer lives. So she says, not only does poor metabolic health lead to chronic disease, but it also compromises your immune system. Perhaps the most startling part of having poor metabolic health is that as a culture, we have normalized the condition, right? So when we have like the flu or some disease that spreads, right? When you have an infection that spreads, and you see that this is a group of people who are really at risk, right? And these are people who are cardiometabolically unhealthy. You don't want to be part of that group. You don't want to be in the at-risk group. You want to be in the low-risk group. So right now, while you're healthier, you want to actually get even healthier so that you're stronger and your immune system is really strong. I like that she focuses a lot on immunity. So does Benjamin BIKMAN in his book, Why We Get Sick. She says, we have never been more in need of a new paradigm for health. And that you're going to hear repeated over and over in a lot of these books. Measurement tools that I do recommend are blood sugar and ketone meters, which I didn't even know what a ketone meter was. So that was kind of cool. That was a new one for me. And a continuous glucose meter monitor. So those are those patches that you see people wearing. And then if you eat something, it will tell you how your glucose is responding to that. All right. So those are some of those testing tools that you can use to monitor how your body's reacting to food. Every time you eat something yummy, you're getting a dopamine hit. How cool is that? Not cool if you start to wear out your dopamine, right? So if you get dopamine, that's great. You feel good. But then what happens is the next time you just need a little more of the thing, whether it's sugar or it's watching a show on TV or it's gambling or alcohol, those things that spike our dopamine, right? You just need a little bit more every time. And that's where it gets super dangerous. And that's where you start heading into addiction. So in fact, sometimes you get the dopamine rush just thinking about the food. Have you ever had that happen to you? You're like excited to go to a restaurant or eat a particular food, and you start to feel good and you haven't had the food yet. That's actually a dopamine response, or a dopamine hit, as she calls it. And in fact, sometimes you get that dopamine rush thinking about the food. When we eat all day long, we get dopamine hits left and right. This raises what we call your dopamine baseline. At this base, as the baseline gets raised, you need more dopamine producing experiences to feel good. So don't want that. All right. This is, I have to say, is if you've never listened to or followed on Instagram, Jessie INCHAUSPÉ, she's a delight. She really is. She's smart. She's a scientist, and she did a really, really cool thing. She just ate a bunch of food and she monitored how her glucose responded. And she put it in this cool book called Glucose Revolution. And she teaches you what to do to not spike your glucose. So how wonderful is that? So here are some of her key tips. And these are just some. So you got to get the book because there's so many more inside. She says veggies before carbs, of course. We know that includes more vegetables in our diets, is a net positive. When it comes to indulging in carbohydrate heavy food, veggies must come first on your fork. By including a plate of vegetables, think broccoli, salad, etc. Before you eat a simple carbohydrate, you can stand the chance of reducing your glucose spike by up to 73%. That's amazing. Another way you can do that is with doTERRA Assist. So right before I eat a carbohydrate, I grab my bottle of doTERRA Assist, and it's part of the MetaPower package. And that's just amazing. That blocks glucose by 43%. So combine that with your vegetables and you really are a home run. That's a home run. All right, drink vinegar before meals. I just started to do this. At first I thought it was weird. I was worried about the enamel on my teeth. So make sure you dilute it with lots of water. It also helps to hydrate you. Sometimes I add a little bit of doTERRA greens in it because it tastes a little bit better, but this has been a game changer for me too. Adding a tablespoon of any kind of vinegar to a cup of warm or room temperature water 15 to 20 minutes before eating can reduce your glucose spike by 30%. So that's pretty cool. Eat carbs with fats. All right. She says, don't eat naked carbs. I love that. So you got to clothe them in a fat. They go straight to your bloodstream, spiking your glucose levels. If you're in the mood for something starchy, rice, tortillas, cereal, bread, pasta, dress them up with fat or protein or fiber. So actually she gives you 3 ways to do it: fat, protein, or fiber with your carbohydrate. And you know what? It's funny because I remember people saying like, just eat carbs by themselves. Like, don't eat your carb, like never eat a sandwich. Well, what she's saying is actually that's wrong, right? That we need to actually combine our carbs with a protein, a starch, a fiber, or a fat. Dress them up, and that will slow the processing of glucose in your bloodstream. So get this book, follow her on Instagram. Love this. It's really, really great advice. Okay. Dr. Mark Hyman, a Clevelander, just like me. He's out of the Cleveland Clinic. Can you imagine? Look at this guy. He's in his 60s. I think he looks amazing. And his book is wonderful. It's easy for anyone at any age, but honestly, it's like, well, you think if he's in his 60s and this book is really written for people, 50 and above. But the truth is that people in their 20s and 30s should be reading this stuff so that they don't end up making mistakes that maybe we did when we were younger, and you're going to just stay so much healthier later in life. So, but he really has cracked the code, and he's delightful to listen to online. He has great podcasts, so check that out. He says, your genes are not your destiny. I love that. They load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. A good multivitamin and mineral like Lifelong Vitality from doTERRA, vitamin D3, omega fats, magnesium support for methylation, special forms of folate, B6, B12, and other methylation nutrients are essential for everyone. All right. So you have to take that series of supplements. We call them Lifelong Vitality. They're a whole food supplement group, includes your omegas, your vitamin and minerals, and your antioxidants called Alpha CRS. I love this group. So easy from doTERRA. It is an all natural, complete, stack of what you need to start and complete your day. It really is amazing. And then he talks about one of his patients and one of their secrets. So he says, her secrets to longevity: do not be jealous or angry. All right. So there's an emotional component to this. You can be a perfect eater, but have some things out of alignment in your life, in your personal life, in your own, in your past, unresolved issues. These are going to affect your long-term health. So he says, take walks, do not stress about your life, and live in gratitude. She's a wealthy woman, rich in love, meaning, and purpose, and she has no ailments except a slow thyroid and a little arthritis. And he's talking about someone, I think she was in her 90s. But get the book, read these testimonials, amazing. If there's one single cause of accelerated aging and disease, of aging, it is this: sugar and starch, especially flour, and the resulting metabolic chaos. Just think of that word. We don't want metabolic chaos. And insulin resistant. You might be tired of hearing this over and over, but eliminating sugar and flour is the single best thing you can do to improve your health and extend your life. And one of the things he recommends is get buckwheat, Himalayan buckwheat. I bought it online. It's amazing. It's from this company. I think it's called Big Bold Health. Check it out. It's in his book. It's delicious. Makes the best pancakes I've ever made. So good. And there's no flour in it. Buckwheat is not a grain. So check that out. That's pretty cool. Not only for your hormones and neurotransmitters, but it's also great for every other core system. And by the way, I have no affiliation with any of these authors. I just love their books. And I figure if the information is good, then it's helping me. It's worth sharing. All right, Dr. William Li. What a beautiful book he wrote, Eat to Beat Your Diet. He also wrote another one called Eat to Beat Disease. He's an MD. And he says, why you need to optimize your metabolism for good health. It's a connection to your health defenses: angiogenesis, regeneration, gut microbiome, DNA protection, and immunity, and vice versa. Fat is actually an organ that is crucial for your health. It needs a blood supply form from stem cells, impacts your gut health, and protects your immune system. Time to rethink our fat. Good fat, or brown fat, helps your metabolism, while excess bad fat is a mortal danger to health and causes chronic diseases, even in people who are slender. So you can be skinny fat. If you've heard about these people, got to be careful. Fat is not necessarily what we think it is, or I should say dangerous fat. So he says for breakfast, he keeps things light, starting with either a cup of whole leaf green tea or espresso and some fruit like kiwi. Okay, so not super sugary fruits. Green tea and coffee are what I call the grand slammer foods. And what I mean by that is they activate all 5 health defense systems in the body. So to learn more about that, check out this book. Really great advice. Peter Attia. The more I listen to this guy, the more I really, really enjoy him. He is a doctor's doctor. He is a solid MD, brilliant mind, great listening to him on podcasts. He's super honest and open about the problems in today's healthcare system, and he really wants to be part of the solution. He says, unfortunately, in today's unhealthy society, normal or average is not the same as optimal. There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. Bishop Desmond Tutu. So I love that quote. The typical cholesterol panel that you receive and discuss at your annual physical, along with many of the underlying assumptions behind good and bad cholesterol, is misleading and oversimplified to the point of uselessness. Another related issue is that longevity itself, and health span in particular, doesn't really fit into the business model of our current healthcare system. And how disappointing and scary is that statement? There are few insurance reimbursement codes for most of the largely preventative interventions that I believe are necessary to extend lifespan and health span. So this is a heavy topic, but one that I think we all have to address. And as patients, we need to go to our healthcare providers and demand that they take a look at prevention and lifestyle as a key element of health. And when we have more and more good physicians that are also backing this idea, I think we have the power to change the system, even though it is big, big business. All right, Walter Longo, he's wonderful to listen to as well. He wrote The Longevity Diet. He says nutrition is clearly the most important factor you can take control of to affect how long you live, whether you will be diagnosed with certain major diseases, and whether you'll be active and strong or sedentary and frail in old age. Awakening the body's dormant ability to heal, protect, regenerate, and rejuvenate itself. Understanding the effect of food composition on specific genes and pathways in the quest for therapeutic diets that are minimally disruptive yet have effects comparable or superior to drug therapy. Food as medicine. Keep focused on that. Medical doctors should prioritize therapies aimed at curing the patient, not just those that slow down the progression of disease. I had a really, really good friend and co-author of one of my books, Elena Jordan, and what she said to me, which has really, really stuck with me, is that if the way that you ate was considered your prescription or your protocol or your therapy, you would follow it. But since it feels just like a taste choice, we make some really bad decisions. So the next time you sit down and you're eating in a particular way to improve your longevity and your health, just remember, this is your prescription and you have to follow it to live that long, healthy life. It's going to be easier sometimes to follow it that way. These two handsome gentlemen run an amazing podcast, and all of the authors that we've talked about today, you can listen to on either or both of their podcasts. They have different interviewing styles. One is an entrepreneur, Drew Perot, and Dr. Huberman is a PhD out of Stanford in California, runs an amazing lab, and his podcast is just so interesting to listen to. And he really, really gives you all the science, but in a way that even if you're not ready to go back for your PhD, I believe that you can really appreciate what he has to talk about. So I hope this is giving you the tools that you need to put yourself in a place of confidence when it comes to your metabolic health, right? You want to make good choices. You want to feel like it is evidence-based. You want to know that there are physicians out there right now doing the work, researchers out there right now doing the work that we need to have done, and that this evidence and this information is coming out. So that is my goal in this podcast, to actually share this information with you. I'm grateful to the Win-Win Women Network for having me as part of their organization, their streaming service. And hopefully, if you enjoyed this podcast or you have other books that you really love, please put them in the comment section. My name is Carrie Donegan. You've been watching Radical Age Reversal. We will be back live next Tuesday with another episode. We're going to talk about summer drinks and essential oils. I'll see you next week.